Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Agency Automators. As usual, I have my co-host, another half, Noah Lerner. Noah, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, it's another amazing day. I had my birthday yesterday. Led a
Nice.
Ah,
webinar. It was it was such a train wreck getting ready for it, but it actually went off pretty much without a hitch. So it was cool. It was really fun.
Very,
nice.
very
How
cool.
about you,
So,
Charlie?
Happy birthday. I didn't know that.
47. Ooh.
so this week we have Charly Wargnier. Um, Definitely butchered his last name, but I'm super excited to have him on. He's going to be talking about automation and Python, and I think he is the main reason why I have so many GitHub repos starred on my account. So, Charlie, welcome.
Hi, guys. Welcome. And no, you did pretty well for the name, I have to say. It sounds pretty French to me.
I tried.
Very good.
So Charlie, you build so many different, cool, interesting, SEO apps, if you will, using Python. Like, how did this all begin? I'd love to hear.
Oh, that's very kind. I mean, well, you know what? I've only started coding Python in the last year and a half. So it's fairly new to me. I started with HTML, CSS a while back. And then I moved towards Power BI and DAX. And I found out that Python a few years ago when I wanted to, make things quicker with my SEO jobs. When you have to, and the stuff we're going to talk about today is about one of the things that I struggled with back in the days, where I had to kind of review millions of redirects and needed a way to make this process a bit quicker, a bit more accurate. So this is, usually the way it works with coding and programming is you have an issue that you're facing in your daily job, and you want to make sure you find a way to save your days and your weekends. And that's pretty much what happened with Python is, okay, I need something. I can't just stay in this kind of situation where I spend too much work, too much time, checking my stuff manually, eyeballing stuff. So this is where I started Python, potentially 2 years ago, but I really got into it a year and a half ago. I think, there's a lot of people I'm thankful for, like Hamlet, maybe. I'm sure you know Hamlet. I think he's been on your show.
Yep.
He's an amazing person, and he's certainly a very inspirational person. He's really, so good at, taking those NLP, machine learning things and applying them to the SEO world. So you've got JR Orgs as well. There's a lot of people here which are doing great stuff for the SEO community. So I've been really inspired by those guys. And yeah, the journey ahead is very exciting. There's so many new things coming every day. And I've got a lot of ideas now to make things better.
Totally. So I know I struggle with this. No, I think you do as well. But Charlie, how do you cope with like a shiny object syndrome of like new repos, new libraries, and things coming out? Like, how do you figure out what you want to tackle first and why?
Again, I think it goes back to the issues I'm facing in my SEO job. So I'm still doing SEO. I've been doing SEO for 10 years now. And it's all about, I'm working a lot with content people, PR people. There is a new thing now with regards to generating content at scale with machine learning. So this is something that Hamlet, for example, talked a lot about in the last few months. This is definitely something that will help my job on a daily basis. So this is, there's so many, as you said, there's so many things, Jordan, you're right. How do you focus? And I think this is really, the problem I'm facing on a daily basis with my clients. And so, I'm just trying to prioritize in that way. If that makes sense.
Totally.
I don't know about you, but that's the way I can try to clean the clutter a little bit out of that. But yeah, it is certainly hard to keep track. It's moving very quickly, and there's a lot of things around out there.
Are you
Totally.
finding that all of your explorations into machine learning and NLP, are they directly impacting your day-to-day job yet?
Well, it depends. I would say the NLP, machine learning, automation, content creation is still early days. I'm still experimenting with it.
Yep.
Then machine learning classification. Machine learning is a vast territory. When it comes to I'm touching image classification, for example, but it's not necessarily useful for my SEO tasks. But with regards to text classification with machine learning, this is something I've been using for quite a bit of time now, for quite a few months. And this is certainly something that helps my daily job, being able to have, data sets with billions of rows and being able to, with an algorithm that you will, and a model you will tweak, being able to kind of save hours is certainly something I'm already leveraging today.
Wow, that's super
It really
cool.
depends. It really depends. But I think the next hopefully the video will. I'm really chuffed for today. I'm a bit nervous, but I'm really chuffed as well. But the next one I'd like to do is really a video about machine learning and how we can, as SEO, save time classifying our content, be it keyword, be it URLs. I think the URL classification is a big one that can still be used in a better way today. So I think that's going to be my next topic.
Cool.
In the coming weeks, I think.
Very cool.
Very cool.
So with that being said, I think this is a good leeway into your presentation today, Charlie.
Yes. Do you want me to share the screen?
Yeah, that'd be amazing. And
bear with me. Let me find out where I need to click. So share screen.
Yep.
Okay, bear with me.
And for the audience back home, doing a hybrid of live coding and presentation can be super nerve-wracking for anybody. And so what we get to experience there are some of the hardest work that you can do is getting a huge piece of code to work right live in front of millions of people.
This is certainly daunting. Yeah, it would have been potentially easier in French, but it's even more challenging for me to do it in English. I like it. I like the challenge and appreciate what you're saying. But so yeah, very quickly, I've quickly introduced myself already. Who am I? Charly Wargnier. So the pronunciation is Wargnier. You were really not far, Jordan. I'm really impressed. I've been an SEO consultant, a BI consultant for about 10 years now. In the UK, mainly in retail, fashion, and tech. So yeah, brands like Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger, John Lewis, big retailer in the UK for whom I worked for quite a few years here. Samsung as well. There's just a few I worked with in the last 10 years, and I worked both in house and agency side. Yeah, mainly in the UK, but I've worked with a few French companies as well. In my coding journey, we've talked about it. Started with HTML, CSS, and then I've also done a lot of DAX, Power BI, and I jumped to the Python boat. So I did a little bit of R. I don't know if you're familiar with the R programming language, and a bit of JavaScript, but I'm certainly nowhere near what you guys are doing or what guys like David, Sotimano are doing. They are fantastic and certainly inspirations that I have. And I like to code to solve problems, complex SEO issues, automate things, save people time, understand a client's problem, a website, a set of issues on a website, and see how we can make things more accurate in terms of reporting or in terms of automation. That's it for me. With regards to the agenda, so prerequisites, we'll talk about what we need in order to achieve in order to develop and code the app and deploy it. We'll talk about the SEO issue we'd like to solve. We'll talk about Streamlit. There's a lot of ways you can actually deploy apps on the market today. There's a lot of different libraries or framework. We will talk about Streamlit. This is something I've been using for quite a few weeks now, and it's outstanding. It's amazing. So we'll talk about this tool. Sorry, you had a question?
No, I got excited because in your Twitter feed, it looked like there were about 2 or 3 weeks where you were geeking out pretty hard on Streamlit, and I think that's when I signed up for it.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Yay, that's good.
Yeah.
Good to hear. We'll talk about Python libraries as well, the one we need to install to make it work. We'll code, we'll deploy if you've got time. We can talk about anything else if you wish after that. In terms of prerequisites, so yeah, we need Python 3.6 and above, ideally. We need an IDE. So I use VS Code, but any would work really, PyCharm, Spider. Which one are you using, guys, out of interest?
VS Code.
VS Code as well.
Yep.
I've been using Sublime.
So we need a command line, obviously. The one installed by default should work, be it on a Linux machine, a Windows machine, or Mac, no problem. We need Git Bash. Git Bash, if you're familiar with it, it's a bit of a command line for Linux, which has been ported on Mac and PC. So we just need that because to deploy the app, we are going to use Heroku, and Heroku relies on that, on Git Bash to deploy. So we'll need this add-on. So we talked about Heroku. Heroku is one of the many tools that you can use to deploy your app, and you need the command line from Heroku. You can obviously, I'll send you the slides when we're done with the presentation, and people will be able to go onto the slides and download what they need. The code and links are for Windows, but yeah, if you go, those tools are working for Linux and Macs. There's no problem at all on that. And obviously the full app and code, we're going to code a very simple app today, and in a few days / weeks, I'll share with you the full app with the code that will be shared on GitHub.
Cool.
So let's chat about an SEO issue that, depending on what you do in SEO, but if you're a tech SEO like myself, there is an SEO issue which is about redirects and checking redirects at scale. And this issue may arise if you have, for example, there's many use cases, but if you have a CMS and you're migrating to a new CMS, the rules will change, the product code in the URL path will change, the grid pages will have different codes as well. So I'm not sure, you guys are doing a bit of SEO as well, right?
Oh yeah, day to day.
So your SEO, fantastic. So your SEO, yep. So I don't have to go back and explain why it's important to redirect the stuff. That's good.
Yep.
Some people sometimes don't really get that, so I need to explain, but that's great. So I mean, from an SEO standpoint, redirecting, one URL from CMS to the new one and have a closest match as possible is very important. So, and you need to be able to do it at scale. When you have, 100,000 URLs or millions of URLs, it can be a bit of a problem because, as I say, you need to redirect counterparts per counterpart, but the exact match checks don't work. And also eyeballing thousands of redirects can be time consuming and error prone. So obviously there's no magic bullet to do that. There's some kind of automation that you can use, but one of the things that you can do to mitigate that, I don't know if you guys know, but the answer is this. Fuzzy string matching is a technique of finding strings that match a pattern approximately rather than exactly. So that really enable us to, find issues quickly on a set of URLs without having to manually eyeball every single URLs, which is something I did in the past. And as I said, it was so painful. I said, I need to find a way to automate this and mitigate this. This is what fuzzy string matching allows you to do. There's several ways you can implement fuzzy string matching. We'll do it with Python, obviously. So with Python, there's a few libraries. There's one, a funny one. The name is funny anyway, Fuzzy Wuzzy. And I don't know if you know the movie reference to this, I think. And the package actually implements fuzzy string matching with a few lines of code. It's very, very lightweight. It's very efficient. And this is the one we'll use today. And you can obviously go on GitHub and download the package. It's open source like many other packages in Python. And it's very widespread as well with regards to other languages. It's in R. I never tried those ports, to be honest, but I think they're pretty stable. You got R, you got Java, Rust, JavaScript, C++, C Sharp, and Go. It's got a few others. It's pretty widespread. Now, if you don't want to code and you still want to do fuzzy matching, you could use, there is a few Excel extensions you can use. And there's also a very good, I haven't really used it thoroughly, but I've heard it was quite good. And it's called FLOOKUP. So I think it's free. I mean, when I tried it a few months ago, it was free. It's multi-language. So I think it's still free. And you can look up based on sound similarity as well. So that's pretty efficient, pretty nice. So you can get it there. But today we'll do it in Python, obviously. To give you a bit of context and to show you the tool in action before we delve into the code. So here's a simple ratio from the Fuzzy Wuzzy package, where here you've got two strings. This is a test, and you get the same string with an exclamation mark. And if you use a simple ratio, it gives you a score of 97. So it's pretty and forgiving, pretty not forgiving and forgiving. Now you can certainly, there's a lot of different ratios that you can use. You get the partial ratio, which is similar to the first one, except that it compares partial string similarity. So if you use the same strings, the same two strings, this is a test and this is a test with an exclamation mark, you have a score of 100. So as you can see, it's a bit more forgiving. And you've got more than that. You get so much more than that. I mean, from an SEO standpoint, and when I review redirects, I tend to use the sort ratio or the set ratio that we'll see in a minute. The sort ratio is even more forgiving because it ignores the word order. So here you got Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear and Wuzzy Fuzzy was a bear. With the initial ratio, you get a score of 91. With the sort ratio, token sort ratio, you get 100. And I think this is an important one to use when you review redirect, because you may have a certain word order in a given CMS, your legacy CMS, and when you migrate to your new CMS and your new solution, the CMS may have different rules, or the SEO people or the developers may have decided to order words differently. So that I think it's important to have this kind of leeway into the ratio, factored into the ratio to do an accurate fuzzy matching, if that makes sense. So I tend to use this one. There's another good one as well called the token set ratio. And this one ignores a duplicated word. So if your CMS tend to potentially have some kind of duplication in the path, you may want to use this ratio as well. As you can see here, on the last example, you get Fuzzy was a bear, Fuzzy Fuzzy was a bear. So you get a duplication here. The score with the sort ratio is 84, with the set ratio is 100. So the set ratio is even more so, it's a bit more forgiving. So it's a good one to use as well when doing this fuzzy match on a set of URLs and when you migrate. So yeah, we'll implement this 3 ratio in our app. And for more accuracy, obviously, we should discard things like grid codes, or we should discard product codes in the URL path. To give you an example, this is one of the clients I worked for quite a few years in the UK, one of the major retailer in the UK called johnlewis.com. And so here in my code, I would sort of discard the code that you can see in red in the URL. So you would want to discard this when you do this fuzzy matching. Obviously, because we haven't got much time here, and we'll keep it very simple, and we will not discard that. But this is something that we should do with potentially machine learning. We talked about machine learning, or regex, something we should be able to do with that. Another day, maybe. And so obviously we'll code in Python, but then we want to deploy. We want to have an app which is really easy to use and deploy it on the web. So there's different ways to do it, but we're going to talk about Streamlit. Streamlit is a fairly new tool. It's been here for about a year, a bit less than a year, I think. But yeah, it's an amazing tool. It's simple, it's free, it's quick. So here's the typical workflow that you have when without talking about Streamlit, let's talk about normal framework. You are creating your code. You start with Jupyter. I'm sure if you do a bit of Python, you've done a little bit of Python in the past, you've heard of Jupyter notebooks.
Sure.
So this is what we use. We use Colab. I tend to use Colab because there's no dependencies. It's online, so it's even better. But we code, we scribble on Jupyter. We then paste the code into a script or a big file. And then we design an app on a web framework like Flask, if you're familiar with Flask. There are quite a few dependencies and elements in place like HTML. You need to set up your CSS, your HTML, potentially your JavaScript. And then once it's there, you need to deploy it and maintain it. And because obviously there is quite a bit of complexity around that. Not only you need to know Python, but you also need to know HTML, CSS, and a lot, and you need to be able to deploy this workhorse. It's a bit hard to maintain, I think, especially if you work with teams. If you're by yourself, if you know your code by heart, it can be okay. But if you work with other people, it can be quite daunting and challenging. So this is one of the issues that Streamlit is solving in a way, is that, as you can see, there is a bit of code on the left in the animation, and on the right you've got the app. So if you guys, if Noah, you've tried Streamlit, you know how it works, and this is the interface. One of the great points is that it's pure Python, so you don't have to learn HTML, you don't have to learn CSS or JavaScript. You just code in Python, and it's there for you. So this is a big USP for data scientists or people coding like myself, or ICOs. So again, no HTML, no CSS, no JavaScript. It's easy to deploy as a result. It's easy to maintain. This is a bit of an example here, where on the left-hand side you can see the Python code. It's pure Python. So what Streamlit does is you just type st dot and the function, which is still a Python syntax. You don't have to learn anything else, and you will have your app deployed, on the fly. There's no other, there's no pipeline set up, there's no other dependencies. Literally just your code, and then you can see the results live on the fly by just refreshing your VS Code. So that's it's very straightforward, really.
I love it.
Unlike other apps. Another great point about Streamlit is that there's no callbacks. So you get this kind of magic caching, where many other tools, I remember having worked with Power BI back in the days, where I was working with super large data sets, billions, millions, sometimes billions of rows, and each time you were adding a little bit to the data sets, you had to refresh the whole thing. Nowadays you've got in Power BI incremental refresh, for example, where you don't have to refresh the whole data sets and wait hours. It's very, very straightforward and very quick. But this is another thing that Streamlit does very well. Unlike other framework, is there's this kind of, you can cache any function that you have in your code, and Streamlit will only update the bits that you're adding. So if you're adding more data as you go along, it will only refresh data you're adding. So that makes it very, very quick, very fast apps. It's great for machine learning, because machine learning, you've got obviously very heavy models, and it makes it very, very streamlined. And it's also very quick to debug. With regards to integration, we talked about machine learning. Certainly integrates greatly with machine learning frameworks. I'm not sure about the whole set of frameworks it integrates with, but certainly Keras, TensorFlow, PyTorch, scikit-learn. If you're familiar with machine learning, those are the 4 main frameworks today. So it works like a charm with those ones. But it's not just for machine learning. And that's the main thing, is obviously those guys are branding the tools like a machine learning tool, a tool for data scientists who want to deploy their machine learning models very, very quickly without having to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But it's literally not just that. I think, it's a game changer for outside of machine learning. It's great to build any type of micro application, SEO application. If you want to demonstrate some kind of technical writing or anything in between, it's a great tool, and we'll certainly have a look at that now.
I love how easy it is to move from code to interface and to actually get something working.
Yeah. Have you tried it yourself, Jonathan?
I have not yet.
Okay.
But just like
tonight,
from reading through the documentation, like it's quick and easy, which I love.
It's fantastically quick. Yeah, I think.
I hate building interfaces.
So what Streamlit is not? It's not a full web framework where, if you go on Flask, you can really have anything. It's pretty much there. It's very modular. You can start small. You can expand with any functionality you can think of. It's very comprehensive. It has quite a few limited styling control, limited custom branding, limited custom layouts. So it's not super flexible yet, but again, it's moving quick. I think it was a few days ago they've raised 21 million as a startup. So they're certainly having a lot of good words around for the tool. And there's a lot of if you want to try new elements, you can try the beta version. You can also integrate JavaScript, so you can have D3. If you guys do JavaScript, D3 is a fantastic. The community forum is great, and there's also I don't know if you know these guys called Mark Skov-Madsen. He's a whiz, he's a Streamlit whiz. He's amazing, super kind, and he's listed any kind of great Streamlit resource or template, or anytime that someone's doing something great with Streamlit, he's got a website called awesomestreamlit.org where you can actually go there and try the apps. It's a very nice resource to go to. So now we'll get cracking with the coding. So again, feel free to install at the same time. But talking about Python libraries, you can install. You're familiar with Python, so you can install those libraries via pip or Anaconda. I tend to use pip because pip is very easy to use. The syntax is straightforward as well. So what you do, you pip install plus the library name usually. So if you want to install pandas, pandas, you just pip install pandas and you will install it onto your system. There's an important note about a virtual environment. This is something that's highly recommended when you work with Python, simply because you want to have a kind of isolated environment to work with for every project, so you don't mess up with the dependencies. If you have, a software library installed without the virtual environment on your local machine, then if a specific project that you're working with does not use this specific version, you will have some conflicts and the app will not work. So it's always a good best practice to create a folder, install a virtual environment on your machine, and then have virtual environment for each project that you're doing. And to install a virtual environment, if it's not done already on your local machine, you pip install. There's a few virtual environments available on the market, but you can use pip install virtual env. And what you need to do, once it's installed, you need to navigate to the folder via cd, if you're familiar with command line commands. And then you type virtual env, and then you activate it via this command here, number 4. And as soon as you do that, then you're in your folder, you activate it. What you're going to see in your terminal is the venv next to your path, which means that you're actually in the virtual environment. And then you can start downloading and installing, not downloading, more installing your package within this virtual environment.
So when you're working, when I look at what I'm looking at there, what I'm seeing is that's right in VS Code, right? Are you doing this in VS Code, or are you doing it through the PC terminal?
For this, I could do either, but for this, I will do VS Code.
Okay.
So,
seems like for anybody learning Python, dealing with environments and libraries, that's been the biggest hurdle for me, honestly. It's like understanding how to deal with dependency issues. That's been the most frustrating thing for me.
Okay. Yeah, you can't really go wrong with you can as soon as you create a project, I would just go into your folder and create this virtual environment.
Yeah, cool.
And then pip install what you need to install, and it will never have any dependencies with any other folder. It will just be there for you. And then you can upload, you can deploy with no conflicts. And obviously, if you've got any issues, it'll be a pleasure to help. Feel free to send me the code.
Yeah.
But it's really best practice to start with a virtual environment like this. And obviously, if you want to deactivate it, you just type deactivate in your command line, and you go back to your normal folder without the virtual environment. So for this project, there's quite a few libraries to install. Streamlit, obviously, and Streamlit packs a lot of different libraries, so you don't have to install pandas separately. You don't have to install NumPy because it's already in Streamlit, but you do need to install Streamlit to make it work, obviously. FuzzyWuzzy is not part of Streamlit, so you have to install it as well as an add-on. You need to install Plotly Express. We'll have an app with a chart, so we need a chart. And Plotly Express is great because it's interactive. unlike Matplotlib or unlike Seaborn. If you use those ones, there's no interactivity on those two apps. With Plotly Express, you can hover over the chart, you can see the data, you can tweak the chart on the fly. So that's actually very, very neat, and that's why I tend to use one. And there's two more libraries to install to make it work. You've got OS, which tends to deal with any like path discrepancies between Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. So this is a nice one to have to make your app like ubiquitous and working on all systems. And you've got base64 for encoding issues to make sure that there's actually no encoding issues in the app. So if you want to check that, if you install Streamlit on your machine and you want to make sure that it's working, you can just go into your command line and type Streamlit hello. You're going to have the template from Streamlit. There's a few examples to play with. If you want to do that now, feel free to do so. Again, conscious of time, so I'm not going to do that now. But it really works very well out of the box. And if you want to run your app, you just need to have the command streamlit run app.py. And this is what will launch your app onto like your local server, if that makes sense, on your local machine. There you go. So we're going to start coding.
Yum.
Yeah, so this is the app basically. Very simple, but what you do is you upload a file, a CSV file with your, again, remembering you about the issue. We want to have fuzzy matching on URLs. So we want to compare URLs which are on the legacy CMS to the URLs which are on the new CMS or the redirected URL. So we'll import some URLs. Here you can see the imported data. So you got the URL here, which are the legacy or the old URL. And then you've got the new URL here and you can compare them. So this is the raw data here. And what we want to do here is we want to be able to see all the ratios applied to each URL. And we want to have a bit of an overview of the situation. It's not just ratio based. I've also put some more magic into it. So we can spot whether there is redirect loops. We can spot whether redirect is redirecting to a URL is redirecting to the home page, which tends to be not very good for SEO, as you know. So there's quite a few formulas into the code, and you have a bit of an overview here. So you can see the chart. If I use a token sort ratio, you see that most of my URLs are great, but there's a few which are yellow, which means that it's not potentially not relevant, and those URLs are worth, and those redirects are worth reviewing. But it's great because you don't have to go through the whole bunch like you would do. You wouldn't have to manually check everything. You would just check the one which are either red. Obviously, the red flag here, it means that there is a redirect loop. So you really want to check that. Otherwise, you want to screw up the whole website. But you also want to check those ones which are the low relevancy redirects, where there's very little relevancy between the legacy URL and the new URL. And you may want to check the orange one as well. But yeah, so that's basically the chart that you will get with your app. You can also select the ratios on the fly. So if I want to see the data with partial ratios, token sort ratios, token set ratios, you can click that. And on the fly, you have, at the bottom, you have a table with your URL, your redirected URL, your path, and all your different ratios. And then you can filter. You say, okay, well, I don't necessarily want to see anything that's 100% because 100 means it's great. So I'm going to filter that out. I only want to see anything that's problematic, that's below 80. So you can filter that to 80 and below. And on the fly, dynamically, the table would be updated on the fly. You don't have to do anything. And once you've got your table, you can download the data as well. So that's quite fantastic. You say, okay, I've got my stuff here. I'm just going to right click and I will just save it. So we can have a quick try here. So if I say to CSV, and then you've got your CSV here. And the CSV is with your filter data.
Can you show us an example of how to spot a redirect loop can you do that with the filtering, or how would you?
Well, that's a good point. I haven't implemented that in this code because
Okay.
it was a bit of a lack of time. But
Yeah.
you're right, I should probably have a column here that says redirect loop, which we'll have in the code anyway. I'll show you later. But in the final table, it's not there. I should probably add it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see, guys, you've got on the left-hand side, you've got the code. And on the right-hand side, you've got the local server in my browser, which is obviously expectedly empty at the moment because I removed the code. So here we go. So if you can see the left-hand side and the right-hand side with the local server, that's great. So the very first step is to import those libraries. You need to import every single libraries that you're going to use in your workbook. So here, you got Streamlit, you've got URLlib. URLlib is useful for parsing URLs, which is very, very nice. You got Fuzzy Wuzzy that we talked about for the fuzzy matching. You've got NumPy, NumPy, and Pandas for anything that's table manipulation. And you got Plotly Express that we import as PX, just for ease of use. You got Base64 for encoding. And then we got OS for to deal with path discrepancies between Windows and Mac, for example. Code. So as you can see, that's my folder here. At the moment, there's nothing. There's just app.py. It's pretty much a convention with Streamlit, so you can call it anything you like, obviously, but I call it app.py. And then I'm starting pasting my code here. And Streamlit will update on the fly. So, I mean, obviously, when I'm going to save here, nothing will happen because there's nothing to be printed. But this is the first step. The second step is to add some text. So we can add some text via the Markdown syntax. I'm sure you're familiar with Markdown.
Yep.
Very straightforward. There's something else I need to do, which I haven't put in the slides, which is you can actually tweak the layout, the size of the layout. So I'm going to make it a bit more, a bit bigger so we can see the whole tables.
Cool.
So let me just do that. So let's talk about the layout. So as you can see, this is a bit of code for the layout. So you can control the width of the layout. So here's going to be 1,300 pixels. And then we're going to add the markdown. So again, I'm not going to type it.
Yep.
Here's the markdown. You're going to save, and Streamlit will
cool.
Update on the fly. So it's already there. And it's the great thing about Streamlit that if I can remove this, I can save, and straight away, Streamlit will update the app on the fly. You don't have to do anything, which is magic, really.
Cool.
Next step, what do we need to do? So we're going to create a checkboxes. I don't know if you really remember on the app.
Sure,
on the top left, we have checkboxes.
Yep.
So we can have 3 checkboxes. We got 3 ratios. Remember, we got the partial ratio, the token sort ratio, and the token set. So we can have 3 ratios set up, 1 line per ratio. In Python, we create a variable. It's an object-based language, so we create a variable, and then inside the variable, you define what you need. So here we're going to have a checkbox. It's going to be displayed on the side. If you add sidebar to the code, it will display on the sidebar. If you remove that, it will be displayed on the main layout. And obviously, you give it a name. And if you want the checkbox to be displayed by default, you just put a default parameter value equal true, and by default, when you launch the app, it will be displayed as such, which is quite handy as well. Just paste the code, and then I'll refresh. So I'm saving, refreshing, and then you can see those 3 checkboxes which are there. And see, by default, because we put the parameter value equal true, by default, those 2 are selected.
Love it.
There you go. Next step. Next step is about the importer. See at the top of the app, we have a little box where we can import data. You can actually define a file type. So obviously, in our case, we'll upload some CSVs, but you can upload Excel, and you can upload pretty much anything. Any file type. So if you want to work with, you have machine learning models, and you want to upload some images, you can do that, for example.
Wow.
Nice. Obviously, if you're familiar with pandas, this is the way you import and read a CSV with pandas. You have your variable, which is your table, what we call data frame name. You got your pd.read CSV, which is your function, and then you got your parameters in parentheses. So the parameter here is the variable, which is the variable above, which is obviously our CSV, if that makes sense, that we've uploaded, sorry. You can choose many things, but I kept it simple here. You can choose the encoding. You can choose any encoding. If you are working with Cyrillic data, the Russian market, you can just upload a Russian file and have an encoding for Cyrillic, for example. So it's very flexible. And you can also limit the amount of URLs that you want to upload. Here I'm limiting the amount of rows to 50. And then you can display the table. So that's interesting because here there's another Streamlit thing which enables you to have a little button to toggle between hiding the table and showing it. So I can just show you what it looks like now. And then go back to my Streamlit. I'm going to save. Hopefully, yeah, you've got the box now. So as you can see, you can upload. And then if I was to go into a CSV file here, import, I can drag and drop directly within on the box. And then you can see the file has been imported and the file has been read by pandas already. So if I want to see the imported data in my app, I just need to toggle and press the button. And I can see all my data being imported with my URL and my redirected URL on the right-hand side. That's pretty cool. So we've imported the CSV, we created a data frame. That's the CSV that we've just seen together. And the next step is to remove anything that we don't need in the URL. So we could do it different ways with regex, for example, but it tends to be quite complex. There is a very simple, neat app or library, sorry, that is called URL lib in Python. You may have used that, Noah, but it's very,
I'm stoked to see.
know.
I use it though.
It's very nice because you can really pass whatever you like. So this is the anatomy of a URL. As you know, you've got the protocol, you got the domain, you got different elements, and then you got your path. And this is really when you do some redirect analysis, this is what you need really, is you really need to kind of do some kind of fuzzy matching on the path. It can be sometimes more complex and different depending on the website and on the type of migration. But usually the number 6 here is what you need to, do the fuzzy ratio against. So this is what we're going to do with URL lib. There's a few library in Python where you can actually do some URL parsing. You've got requests. Requests tends to be a bit more complex and more comprehensive, but URL lib is actually very nice and very straightforward and very lightweight. So here's what we're going to do here. So we're going to extract all paths from URLs and redirected URL. So this is the formula. This is the code. Where you've got your new column. We'll create a new column called URL path. We'll have the function called path function. And what's really cool is that you can extract whatever you like with just a fragment. So if you want to extract the URL path, you've got a sub-function called path. But if you want to extract a fragment, you've got a sub-function for fragments. So it's very flexible and very straightforward. And with Python, there's several ways to iterate and apply a specific function throughout a whole data frame. Yeah. And so you couple the apply function, as you can see here, with Lambda. So I'm not going to go too much into detail, but this is how you apply a function throughout the whole data frame or through a specific columns. Okay, so I've pasted the data now. Let's have a look. Let's refresh. And you can see, look, it works. Yahoo!
Killer.
So before we had the URLs with the full URLs, the past, just the path. Mm-hmm. And then step 2, we've done it now. We've got URL, redirected URL, path for the URL, redirected path. We get all the ratios here.
So does line 5, is that the one that catches your eye as something that you need to work on fixing? I think it's line 5 or 6.
Exactly. That's a very good point. So yeah, you're right. So this, I put something very dummy in the data set for the sake of the example. But yeah, you can see it's 100%, but it will be flagged. What we need to have is categorization now to flag some redirect loop. So you're right, this is, we are redirecting to the same URL, so it will loop. So this needs to be flagged as a red flag. And this is exactly, very good transition, Noah. This is exactly what we're going to do now. And now, as I say, excellent transition, we need to have a column which categorizes the ratios per buckets, if that makes sense, and also potentially flag other issues. So here it's a bit more, I guess it's a bit daunting with all the data here in the code, but what you do is you create several copies of the main data frame. So you get 1 copy per ratio, and so you have 3 tables in total. For each table that you create as a copy, you drop the columns that you don't need. So for this table, which is called partial ratio, which is the first ratio, we'll drop the rest. So we don't need token consideration, we don't need token sort ratio. So we can drop that with the drop function. And then once we've dropped the data that we don't need, we can start create some conditions. So what we're saying here, that we create a column that says, well, we want to spot anything. It's very simple, obviously, but I wanted to give you an idea of what we can do with Python. But we're just saying, okay, the condition 1 is we want to check redirect loops. So what we're doing here, we're saying, okay, well, in this column URL, if the URL column equal the redirect column, so there's like exact match, same value, then in that case, it's wrong because you've got a redirect loop in there. So that's a very basic function, but when it comes to review redirects, it's essential. And then you go to condition 2, which could be something like, okay, well, you know, if you decide, if the rule that you put in place in your redirect matrix redirects to the home page, well, maybe that's wanted, but maybe that's not wanted. Maybe that's a quirk. So we want a rule that identify that as being a quirk. So here what we're saying is, I don't know if you can see my mouse moving, but you say, if the redirect path is / which is basically homepage, it means that it redirects to the homepage, and you may want to review that as a potential issue. And then there's 2 more rules, 2 more categorization levels, which I've implemented, which is, it's pretty basic. You say, okay, if the partial ratio is more than 80%, it's highly relevant. So it should be potentially fine. If it's less than 50%, it's medium relevancy. And if it's lower than that, then it's low relevancy. So I talked wrong here. So the first ratio, less than 80, high relevancy, less than 50, medium relevancy, low relevancy is the rest. It can probably be tweaked better, but at least, hopefully you got the ideas. You get the ideas of how it works.
Yep.
And then we do the same for the 2 other tables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this code and put it into our VS Code. And as you can see, you've got your step 2 with the fuzzy ratios, and you've got the new table here where you've got we've got the URL, redirect, path, ratios, and then we've got the ratio class. So this is the partial ratio here. This is the token sort ratio here. And this is token set ratios at the bottom. So what I did in this code is I've separated, I created a copy of each table, then I've merged everything again together. So next step is to create a pivot table. There's bits of it's funny because when you're familiar with Excel, you tend to forget the steps you need to say to create a pivot chart. But yeah, in Python, like any other language, you need to kind of create a pivot table. You need to pivot the data before you can create a chart with the aggregated data, if that makes sense. So we need to create this table before we can chart the data. There's different ways to create pivot tables in Python. There's the pivot function, df.pivot. There's the mel function, which I'm not too familiar with. There's quite a few ways, very versatile. I tend to use pivot. And this is a table we want to get as a result. So we want to be able to have a count of all the ratios per algo type, and we want to have a bit of an idea of we want to have a label of that. So here, in this instance, for the token sort ratio, you've got 6 redirect loops, and expectedly you get the same amount of redirect loops in token set and partial ratio. And then you've got 13 medium relevancy for token sort. And because partial is a bit more and 4 given, you've only got 2 there. That's the pivot data. And this is the code for the pivot data. So to get a pivot table, so you've got your pivot table variable, your pivot function, you got a table that you want to pivot. So in this instance, this is the table we just created, which is the table with all the data. So df new. The values you want to get. So you want to get the values from ratio. You want the count from ratio. And then you've got the columns that needs to go into the pivot table. And you've got the type of aggregation. In this instance, this is a count.
Mm-hmm.
And the index, don't worry about the index, but yeah, we wanted to reset the index in this case. So I'm just gonna take this pivot table quickly. So that's the pivot table formula. I'll take it there. I'll paste it in there. I'll display it. And see, yeah, you can see there, step 4, pivot table. So I've got a pivot to data here.
Cool.
Yeah, very nice. Next step, we need the chart. And that's the whole point of doing this app. So it can be quite daunting as well with the syntax, but it's all very logical. It all makes sense. You've got the variable for your chart. So that's the name basically, called fig. You got a px dot is for Plotly Express. And then you've got a type, a chart type. So here we want a bar chart. So it's going to be dot bar, but you can have, it's very, very versatile. You can have any charts you want. You got the data frame that you want to chart. So this is the pivot table that we've done. It's called Q ratio. It should be called differently. That's just a name which I've used in the past. I should have changed that. But yeah, that's just a data frame to chart. Then you got the categories to display in the chart. So those are the ones we defined together. Remember, we have the high relevancy, medium relevancy, redirect to the home page, low relevancy, and redirect loop. And you can also set up, it's very, very comprehensive and very, you can tweak anything you like with Plotly. So if you want to have some AHX color scheme per bar or per section, you can do so. So here what I'm saying is I'm taking a color scheme for each element. So anything that's obviously bad, I'm going to tend to go into red or orange, dark orange. Anything that's good, I'll tend to put green or something lighter. And then the formatting, again, you can decide to have orientation. It's going to be horizontal. Then you have the height, the width. You can decide how you want the data to be hovered. If that makes sense.
Sure.
It's pretty flexible. And then you got more parameters as well, more elements here with regards to the axis title, the y-axis title, the fonts, the type of bar chart that you like, and so on and so forth. And then once it's done, you can just display the chart. So I'm just going to do that right now. Save, it will update on the fly. And if I scroll down, hopefully, yay, I've got my chart here. So here you go. You got the right color scheme. Anything that's high relevancies is in green. So we can decide to explore that or not. It's up to you, but at least it's already sorted for us. Anything that's red is the redirect loop. Anything that's orange is low relevancy. So we may want to have a proper look at that and see whether the redirect is a quirk or whether we had to consolidate the content, whether it's expected or not. And if it's not expected, you can fix. If it's expected, you can complain to UX people or content people saying that's bad. You need to change that. That's going to affect your SEO big time.
So take us through how you as an SEO think through.
Well, again, first of all, as a caveat, this is simplistic. So this will have to be tweaked as per the client's needs, the business needs, the website's needs. But in a nutshell, if you've got something that is not an exact match, which means that it's a redirect loop, so you have to flag that as a red flag. Anything that's very relevant, but that's not an exact match, that means that allegedly, usually it can be a good redirect because it's redirected to, and remember, we've only analyzed the path here, so anything else is discarded. if we're redirecting to a new domain or redirecting to a new subdomain, it's not going to be taken into account. So we're only going to review the URL path. But the logic here is that if it's not an exact match, but it's highly relevant, if the fuzzy matching is highlighted as highly relevant, then potentially it's an okay redirect. It's a good redirect to keep. And so the idea here is of this little app I built for the sake of this little chat is it gives you a way to be quicker in your analysis. You can spot the issues straight away, but you can also discard anything that you may have had to review manually and eyeball manually. It's okay when you have hundreds of URLs, but if you've got a few millions, that could certainly help. So the low relevancy here, if that makes sense, is if you've got something really, really different, spotted by the fuzzy matching ratios, then it basically means you may want to explore that on a CSV and have a look at that in more detail. Medium is very subjective and debatable, but yeah, the assumption is that the high relevancy should usually be a good kind of redirect, because both URL paths are not exactly matching, but matching very, very well, which means that it's a good kind of redirect. I know it's you know, it's very schematic, very simplistic. It may not work in every single case. It's not a silver bullet for everything, but you know, as a rule of thumb, it may work.
Cool.
So there's one more step that we didn't do.
Oh, goody.
Because we've got another view here. We know what's happening with the data set. But then what we want to do is be able to explore the data. And we want to say, I don't want to have 1 million or, you know, even 10,000 URLs. We want to explore the one which are the red ones. We want to explore the one which are the low relevancy ones. So we are able to do that. So that's the chart. It's displayed. It's all good. And so there's actually two more steps here. Another step is to apply conditional expression to filter the CSV on the fly.
Oh, cool.
In other words, you just click on the checkbox, and if you click on this checkbox, as you can see, it's a normal if conditional here. You're saying if I click on that, then you want a slider to appear. And you want this slider, if you decide to move this slider to a restrained set of values, you want the CSV to update on the fly in my app. And this is what we're building here. So we have the if function. So if the checkbox is ticked, then display the relevant slider below. So this is the slider section. And this is very neat because what you have here is, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but you can see you have a variable which is the maximum value of the of any given column. So here the column is the partial ratio column. You're going to take the max of this, and it's fully dynamic, right? You know, every maximum will differ depending on the data frame. So what it does, it reviews the column max value, assign the max value to a variable, and then the slider will have a minimum value and a maximum value as per what's in the data frame. So that's fully dynamically generated, which is nice.
Are you making 3 sliders, one per type?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So here you've got maximum value, minimum value, dynamically generated. You've got the slider to be created. And then on the last line, you've got, let's see, you're going to have those minimum maximum value as part of your as your parameters. And then the last step is to be able to filter the table on the fly based on the slider values. And this is those last 3 lines are just about that. So you've got the first line, which is for the apply function that we discussed earlier in the chat, where you're going to iterate and apply that throughout the whole data frame. And then what you're saying here is that you will display. So this is fully dynamic, right? I don't know if that maybe it's a bit. I mean, I'll try to kind of explain it simply, but as you can see here, partial ratio slider is my variable for the slider, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so what we're saying is that you will filter this column as per this value, the value of the slider. So if you say you want to reduce the slider to 80 and less, if you move the slider to 80 and less, then the table will update on the fly. So let's have a look at what it looks like. But this is just, hopefully it makes sense. So if I go back to my code, where was I? So yeah, I pasted all you see those conditional that we've discussed. So not this slide, sorry, the other one. So the busy one. So there's actually one block. This big block here you can see on this slide is just for one ratio. So we obviously need to do the same for the two other columns. So pasted everything here. And then I'm going to refresh. Hopefully it will work. So yeah, look, it works. So let me just give you an example. So here, I've got
it only shows sliders for what's checked.
Was that, sorry?
No, I'm chuckling. It's so cool. Like if you checked all three ratios up top, it's going to show you all three sliders.
Exactly. It's fully dynamic, which is nice.
Cool.
Again, it's pure Python. I didn't do any HTML or anything, or any JavaScript. So it's really nice. So here I'm going to select token set, token sort, because those are the one I'm interested in. So I'm selecting the two sliders are appearing. I've got the minimum value and the maximum value of each ratio per slider. And then obviously this one is with everything, right? But at the bottom, you want to filter table. So let's say I want to have a look at, but yeah, at the moment we have those two here, and I can just give you a quick example. So let's say I just want to review the one which are really different in terms of similarities. So I'm going to say anything that's 48 and less, I want to have a review of that. And obviously it's a very short sample file with very, very little amount of URLs for the example. But if I do that, I'm going to have this URL here. So as you can see, this is not a redirect loop because it goes from es/nowhere to es. So that's fine, but it's very different. So well, it's probably worth having a look at that. Is it a good redirect to have, or is that expected? Do we need to check with content, with UX, whether it's expected? So at least you have this ability of streamlining your work, and you can certainly gain some significant time doing so. And so yeah, so that's that. And the last step is obviously we want to be able to export this data on a CSV. So what we'll do, so here you've got to try and accept, because by default, when you launch the app, you will not have any CSV uploaded. So you got to have a name error because the app will work, will have a look at your variables, will not find the variables in your code, will have a name error, and it will display an error, like a big red screen. So what you want to say here is that if you see a name error, well, instead of having an issue screen, you're just going to display a nice weight text. However, if you upload the file, then in that case, you're not going to have the name error, and you're going to display that instead.
Got it.
This is how you handle exceptions with Python. One of the way, anyway. I'm sure there's many others, but that's the one I know. Put in our code. It's there. I'm going to save it. And here you go. So that's that. So there's a bit of markdown at the top to download the CSV file with an arrow, and then you can right click. So again, we're only going to export the filtered CSV in this code. So I'm doing that. I'm saving the link. 3.csv. And then let's have a look. Hopefully it has worked. Yeah, here you go. So that's just the data that we filtered. And then you can go back and review. And
you can get pretty granular.
what do you mean, with Python or with Streamlit?
Well, just the way that you're parsing through the data with the sliders. Like you could find specific conditions with a slider, and then you get your filter table, and you can say, yeah, this data is meaningful. Whatever I'm looking at in step 6 is meaningful and worth exporting, and then you can export it and have a different team review the list and come up with an action plan around it. Yeah.
I think with regards to rules, because I mean, Streamlit will handle a lot of data, a lot of code. You can go as granular as you wish. This is very, very straightforward, very basic. Yeah, so you can certainly go very, very deep with that. There's one thing we need to do is we need to hash the st.header, which are the unnecessary headers, and we need to hash st.dataframe so that those ones don't appear in the app, if that makes sense.
You're commenting them out, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. So this one is fine. We can leave this one because this is the last table. We want to see this one, obviously. Yeah. Let's have a look in our code. So this is a copy, so we're going to leave that. So no, we need this one as well. We can remove that. We don't need this. We can remove this one. We don't need this one. We don't need this one either. Okay. So let's comment out. Comment this one out. This one out. There's a few more here.
It's not removing the data from memory or anything. It's just removing the visualization of it, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
You're removing the header and you prevent the data to be printed, the tables to be printed. So there's a few here. And let's have a look. We can remove that as well. Let me say that and have a look.
Boom.
Boom. We've got just what we need. You got the date, the content. We got the CSV uploader. You got the chart with all the data. You got the filter table, and you got the download button. That's all we need.
Yep. Super cool.
Next step, deploying. But Heroku, I mean, is the one I'm going to use it because it's very easy to use. Hopefully, I mean, it will work. But you can deploy up to 5 apps for free, depending. Obviously, it depends on the consumptions and how many people will visit your app. But provided it's just a proof of concept, you can have 5 different apps hosted for free. Python Anywhere, I think it's only 1. So it's really, Heroku is very nice for that. It's super easy, super handy. You can follow this guy. I mean, there's a lot of talented people in the Streamlit community. One of those guys called Charistek, Jade Charistek on YouTube. He's got tutorials for every possible deployments, every possible Streamlit app. If you want a Heroku, if you want AWS, if you want Google Cloud, he's got you covered. And he's, really, really nice person as well. And he's got just more. I mean, his YouTube channel, I just can't understand why he's got so few followers. It's got so much good stuff on there. So yeah, so what do we need to make it work? And that's one of the good things with Heroku is that it's pretty straightforward. And when I talked about Google Cloud and the Cloud Run, and you need to be kind of familiar with Docker. And Docker is great, but there's also a bit of a learning curve to it. So yeah, you don't have this learning curve with Heroku, which is nice. You just need a requirements.txt file. So I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it basically gives a list of the libraries that needs to be installed in order for the app to work online. To work on a serverless application. So there's a quick way to do that in Python. You can just go into your command line. You just navigate to the folder that you've created for your project. You just do a pip freeze, so pip and then freeze, and it will actually gives you all the libraries which are within this folder. So the idea is to do a pip freeze in your folder. You'll have all the libraries with the versions of each library, which is very important. It's not just the library that you're using, it's the version that you're using. If you're using TensorFlow, for example, it could be a head scratch between TensorFlow 1, 2. If you use TensorFlow a little bit, it's great. It's fantastic. It's absolutely amazing. But the versioning can be quite a big problem. So when you do a pip freeze, you get the exact version you had to use to make your application work.
Yeah, got it.
And then you got a proc file, which is just a line of code which displays what you have. So it's just like very, very easy to do. You got a bash file called setup, and that's it really. So we'll do that now very quickly. Again, I'm not going to code that because it's probably going to take a few minutes. I don't want that to want people to get asleep. So it's just there on my screen. I'm just going to paste that into the folder and deploy. And here's what the requirements.txt file looks like.
Wow. It's not even. I was wondering if it was going to be a JSON file. It's even simpler.
Yeah. No, there's no JSON.
Yeah.
There's no JSON.
I didn't know what to expect. That's super cool.
Yeah, no, it's really, really nice. And it's the easiest way, I think. And potentially Python anywhere is easier, but you haven't got 5 apps. It's only got 1. So this is bargain, really. Okay, so let's go back to the folder. So this is the folder. At the moment, we only have the app.py.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my folder here. See, so you got VS Code.
Mm-hmm.
Put that a bit wider. So you got add.py. So you want to add those extra files, and you want those extra files in this folder before you deploy. Otherwise, it won't work.
Got it.
So the first one we can create is we need to create is the proc file. I've got the proc file here. Maybe I can use that. Yeah, we've got a few files here. So actually, I'm going to take those files, put them here.
Copy paste. Excellent.
Yeah, just because I'm conscious of time. I don't want.
Yep. That's cool.
So that's the proc file. As you can see, it's just one line that says, "Oh, we got a bash file."
Oh wow. Okay.
You see, that's super, super easy. The requirement.txt is a bit more comprehensive, but again, you don't have to worry about it.
Most of that's from Streamlit, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. The only one that I've shown in my slides, Streamlit will handle everything. Any kind of non-ubiquitous library like fuzzy woozy or the base 64 needs to be installed as an extra because it's not as part of Streamlit. And then we have the setup, the bash. Again, you don't have to learn that. It's just like a default. I think it's just default to any app, I think. And it's just a few lines of code in bash. So once it's done, you got everything in your folder. You should be fine. So we can give it a try and try to deploy. That's going to be fun. So I think it'll be fine. Okay, so we've done that. So what do we need to do? We need to navigate to the folder. So here, when you have a look at VS Code.
Yep.
Oops, I'm messing around. We're already there. As you can see, VS Code has updated our setup. So we got the bash file, we got the requirements.txt. The README is obviously it's non-compulsory. It's nice if you want to upload your files to GitHub. It's always best practice to have a README file, but it's certainly optional. And you got a proc file here. So we got all our files. As you can see, you're familiar with VS Code. You can see the terminal here shows that we're in Streamlit. So we want to get out of Streamlit. And as you can see, if I open a new terminal, a new CMD, I'm in the virtual environment. So we want to get out. So I've typed deactivate. I'm getting out of my virtual environment. I'm in the right folder already, so I'm in the right place. And I'm going to have a look at the other steps. So what you need to have is to have Heroku installed. So you need to have, obviously you need to have an Heroku account. You need to create an account, and you need to have the CLI, so the command line for CLI applications for Heroku. So you need to download that. If you go to Heroku CLI, you will be able to download it. As soon as it's downloaded onto your machine, you type Heroku login. Now, hopefully, the magic will be there. It seems to be working. So I don't know if you can see that, Noah. If you can see
Yeah, totally. Yep.
You can see that. That's great. Okay,
Yep.
cool. So you can press any key to open up the browser to log in, or you can exit by Q. So I'm going to type any key here. It will log in. So it will populate a screen. You just need to press the login button. Logged in, so that's fine. You can close this window. You go back to the CLI. As you can see, the CLI has logged me in. So you got my email address here, which is the email address I've used to sign in the Heroku account. And the next step is to create the app. So you just need to type Heroku create. You can put your app name, or if you don't put anything, it will create a random name. So I'm going to try like this. Seems to be working. Yeah, so you've got your name in blue here, if you can see it.
I like it.
And then you've got your Git URL here. If you've already done some kind of deployment to a given folder, you're going to have a Git folder. This Git folder will be hidden. So if you're using Windows, you need to have a look at hidden files. You need to go in the settings, in the systems, and display the hidden files and remove this Git file. I don't think I've done any deployment on this file, so on this folder. So I can have a look. There's no Git file, so that we're fine. But if you have a Git file, you have to remove it manually.
Is that so that Heroku can build its own?
Sorry?
Why do we have to remove the Git folder?
It's a good question. I'm not. It's just like I've tried without removing it, and it was not working. So I went on Stack Overflow. So you need to remove it. I think you can't really override it. Well, you create one folder per deployment, and if you want to redeploy, you may have to remove it. I'm not quite sure. That's a good question.
Okay,
I'll have a look for you. Okay. So next step is you type. There's a few lines to type. So Git init. So as you can see, it's really reinitialized the existing Git repository. Then you're going to type git add. Don't forget a dot. There's a dot here. And then you will have to type git commit. I think there is a bit of syntax here. So -m and then some message. I think you have to have the message for some reason. So if I do that,
that's the message that'll get printed in GitHub or whatever, where
yes,
the commit message, like initial commit or fixed X or Y or Z.
That's correct.
Okay.
So yeah, I've got some interesting files, which are actually CSV files which are in this folder. Hopefully that will be fine, but hopefully there will be no conflict with that. And so the last steps, we've got Heroku. Oops, not there yet. Not yet. Let's have a look. Heroku. Git. That's not something I know by heart anyway, so I just need to have a look.
Can you scroll down? Because I don't think we can see what you're doing.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Well, hold on a sec. Let me just move my mouse.
Like this, maybe?
No.
Oops.
Yeah, there.
Let's have a look. Is that better now?
Yes.
Yeah?
Perfect. Yep.
Cool. So we've got the app name here.
Mm-hmm.
We need to copy this. You need to type Heroku git column remote -a, and then you need to put, if I remember, you need to put the app name here. Cool. And the last step, hopefully, that's the moment of truth here, Noah.
I'm really excited about this.
If you put, git push Heroku master, so we'll try this one. Git push Heroku master. Is that the right syntax? Yeah. It seems to be working. So, so what it does here is, I don't know if you can see that on the command line.
Yes.
Is installing all the libraries, the Python, It's putting the Python library that we've put in the requirements.txt. It's putting SQLite3, which we don't need, but it's putting all those kind of default
So it's going to
libraries.
do all of those libraries, right?
It will install everything, yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
what's that? Sorry?
There was a pretty extensive list of libraries, and it's
Yeah.
doing that now, it looks like, and we're...
Yeah, it's installing everything on your on the server. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm seeing the Heroku workflow as being VS Code, GitHub for version control, and then you're doing pushes from GitHub up to Heroku.
Correct.
Okay, cool. I get it.
Yeah, so it'll take a while, I think, to upload. Hopefully, not too long. But I think that's pretty much it for this little app. Obviously, you can follow me on Data Chaz on Twitter. If you have any, you guys or your subscribers have got any questions, they can reach me out there. But if you've got any questions, and hopefully we'll have the icing on the cake and have that working. But yeah, if you've got any questions, let me know. And I'm sure my wife will call me because I need to grab her. But I need to fetch her to a place in town. But I think I've still got a few minutes.
It looks close.
We're getting there. Look at that, compressing.
Pressing. Very
Beautiful.
exciting.
The prog file, it seems fine.
What of these skills that you've learned in the past year and a half do you think have helped your clients make more money? I mean, because really, I get so turned on by innovation. Like, it's my favorite part of what I do is learning and sharing new ways of working. But I also have to justify the innovation. I have to know how it's going to make our company more money and how it's going to make our clients more money. Do you have a sense of what you've learned that you think is the most meaningful from that perspective?
Well,
or another way of asking the question is, do you think that learning all the programming has helped you learn how to critically think differently, and that's what's helped you make money for your company and your clients?
In a way, I think with regards to Python and critical thinking, I think, when you work with Excel, because you're limited in the amount of data you can review. For example, I worked with Excel for years, and sometimes when you're talking about big data, you're not seeing everything. You're not necessarily seeing the big picture. You have to cut corners. You have to use sample size, samples of the whole data set. So being able to kind of work with big data and work with big data accurately has allowed me to be more accurate in my, in my reporting. It's allowing me that. So I think accuracy is important, and data science has allowed me for that. And I think I'm still at the very beginning of the journey, really. I know I'm going to be doing data science for the next 30 years now. There's no problem. So it's an exciting journey ahead. I think certainly it has improved accuracy. It's also improving my workflow, and I think it's quite thrilling to be able to work with people. And as Hamlet always says, it's like, if you can save hours doing something by automating your work, well, let's do it. And I think Python it's certainly not everything. I think in the critical thinking, you don't have to know Python to be good. But with regards to saving time, automating stuff, and the machine learning side of things and NLP side of things are very exciting facets of Python. I think, it's certainly a very steep learning curve, but I think the final objective, one of the final objectives is to save time and also make my clients earn more money in a way. It's whether they're saving time or whether they are having better outcome online. Certainly, but it is certainly time consuming. There's a lot of investment in there.
Do you think we're going to be able to see the app live now if we go to that URL?
Yeah, so it was that?
Well, it says the remote.
Yeah, let's have a look. Yeah. You know what? I got carried away with your very good questions in there. I've just missed the milestone in there.
Well, I saw lots of good things happening in Terminal as we were running the mouth, and I
Okay.
was very excited. Okay, cool.
Well, let's try. Oh, wow. Okay.
No, but if you go back to your terminal, a couple lines up, that right
Yeah,
there, I
let's have a
thought
look at
that
this
was
one.
where
Yeah,
we were gonna have to go.
hopefully.
Oh boy, what does it say?
Oh boy, look at that. So that's the URL. Obviously, like any other deployment tools, you'll be able to have your custom. If you want to have this app on your custom domain, you can do that. It's very straightforward to do so. But here there is one thing we didn't do actually, is to have some, those try and accept.
Yep.
We needed to do it at the start of the code as well, which we didn't. So that's why you've got the name error issue. That's very easy to remove and to fix. But yeah, I mean, let's have a look. I think it should work. You take we'll take another import.
Oh, that was the name error you said was going to happen until we loaded data in. Right. Okay.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
I'm
the
catching on
bit.
quickly. I'm like, wow, why do we see pink? And then I was like, oh yeah, he said that we were going to see pink until we uploaded a file. Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, you go.
Oh,
So
that was
that's uploaded. You've got. You can see the imported data here. You got a toggle.
Yeah.
You got those fuzzy matching algorithms that you can select. Partial, token sort, token set. You got the sliders.
So,
You got everything.
okay, so this is really cool. So the thing that I see that's really cool is my understanding of Streamlit has just went from like pinhole to explosive, which is I went from thinking it was an app on streamlit.io, I think is the domain.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
to getting Streamlit into your computer and then getting it to launch as an app on Heroku. That's super cool.
Nice, nice. Really happy you like it. Hopefully
Yeah.
the people watching YouTube and the channel will like it as well. Hopefully.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
cool.
Now I want something like this for Node.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like sitting here going like,
Predictable.
oh, how do I get this for JavaScript?
Well, I mean, have a look at, as I say,
Yeah.
the tool is moving pretty quickly and they have those kind of integrations. I'm pretty knowledgeable about it. I don't really know a lot because I haven't tried, but they integrate with JavaScript and D3. So who knows, you may be able to integrate with Node. That's a good question. That's certainly something I'm going to ask on the forum. They're very reactive, very good. So I can ask them. Or if you got the questions, drop the questions or ask them directly. I'm happy to help.
Okay.
But that'll be good.
So the whole time you were doing this, my mind started to drift off into space because that's how my mind works. But I was following along perfectly, but I started to think about URL parameters. And I started to think about how when you get into Search Console, the one piece of Search Console that I feel like has not been covered with, the ultimate guide to is URL parameters. And then how to test around what URL parameter changes in the old version of Search Console, how that actually impacts indexation and how that impacts SEO performance. I would love to have a tool like this so that I could roll out changes, test how it's impacting, and then incorporate those best practices into my workflow. Because I do e-commerce SEO like you do, and I work with a platform that has tons of filtering, but they're not filtering to full URLs. They're filtering to fragments. And I would love to know how to do it properly and to have best practices in place. And
Okay, that sounds. You know what? Let's just like catch up after this this video call and gather your your ideas and requirements. I think the next step, one of the next project on Streamlit, you have the OAuth authentication that you can craft within Streamlit. So you can very easily, with just a few fields, connect to any tool that would require the OAuth. I'm not sure how you pronounce that with the American accent.
OAuth 2 or whatever.
OAuth, okay. I would have sent it to French there, so I've just shut up. But yeah, so you can easily do that. And so, in other words, you can easily connect to GSC, Search Console. So I think that's a nice little project. Yeah. I mean, just send me let's have a chat or send me the requirements and to potentially have a look at that. That's a nice little project to work on.
I'm glad I got you excited. Wow. So
Got me
Charlie,
there.
this has been a total hoot. It was really exciting for me to watch you work. It's really exciting to get in a screen share together. I know Jordan was really frustrated that he couldn't stay longer. And for us, it's been exciting because we started the Hangout in April of last year or February, March, I don't remember. And you were one
Yeah.
of the first people to subscribe. And you were like commenting and asking questions. And at that time, it seemed like you were just getting started with stuff. And to see your career growth and your career arc, and to see how you're getting published in search engine land, and how all of our small little world is intertwined, it's pretty magical.
That's very kind. I appreciate the kind words. And I think, yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. We're on the same path here. We're going to keep that together.
Yep.
It's only the start.
I
It's
know.
the start of
I
the
know.
journey.
It's amazing. Okay. So
Let me take a picture.
I know this
Can
is
you take a
really great.
picture?
Thanks so much. And for everybody watching, we really appreciate you sticking with us, and we'll see you next time. Our next episode is going to be with Cindy Crum from Mobile Moxie, and that's really cool. But to have this kind of hybrid live coding has been amazing. Charlie, let's keep in touch. I'm really
We do.
excited to do Zoom calls with you in the future so we can talk about that next steps.
It's been a
Thanks,
pleasure.
everybody.
Thank you for having me, guys. Thank you.
Anytime. Have a great day. Peace.
You too. See you.